The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Download their top-rated sportsbook app and use promo code RTRS. And brought to you by LL Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged. Adam Kasabi, the official realtor of the Process, processrealtor.com, and Kinetic Skateboarding. Get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver. On the show today, it's November 1st, and it does not seem as if it was a practical joke in that Daryl Morey, according to Shams, is signing officially today and will be announced officially tomorrow on Monday. Unbelievable. In town, meeting with Doc Rivers. Elton Brand signed a contract extension. Sam Hinkie does a 100-minute long podcast with Pablo Torre, says a lot of things, and also notably doesn't say other things. And back to a hopeful Daryl Morey-filled mailbag. It feels as if order has been restored into our little community. It is a nice feeling. The first nice feeling we've had in so many years. Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who voted with 2 masks and a face shield, like he's an outbreak. I'm Mike Levin. I was going to say
I did do that.
Yeah, both 2 masks and the shield. 2 masks
and the shield, and we were going to wear gloves. I thought gloves was a little excessive. I drew the line of gloves, but I did use one of those, almost like a finger condom, where you just put it on like one finger. And so I did
a finger cut? You wore a finger cut. For Howard Stern fans, years ago, Jackie Martling had like some disease on his fingers, so would have finger cuts on at work. So
yeah, but it was very safe. There was no line. It was easy as hell. Felt great. All good stuff. Recommend it. Go vote in person. Do it safely, or drop your ballot off at a ballot drop-off place. Do not put it in the mail. It is too late for that.
I would like to tell everyone that they can feel safe, though Mike did wear 2 masks, finger cuts, and a shield.
Why not?
Sure, if you have access to it, but it is plenty safe. Wear a mask, keep your distance, and if you happen to touch something, which you will, to vote, just wash your hands before you touch your face, and you'll be okay without the finger cuts.
All of it.
Yeah.
But if you want to wear 3 masks and try to one-up me, I would respect it.
I would love to see a picture of that. If somebody one-ups, okay, so Mike voted 2 masks, face shield, and finger cuts. If you one-up him, I would love to see a picture of you one-upping Mike.
Please.
Voting safely.
I would love it.
Yeah. So here we are. I guess we'll do Morey first and then Hinkie, because the Morey thing is now official. According to Shams, Morey signs today, is in town. There was a picture that John Clark posted yesterday of he and Doc Rivers sharing a meal, both with their laptops, going over thoughts of the...
No need for secret flight plans or Malvern prep recruiting trips.
No. That'll come after, obviously, the Malvern prep stuff. So, and Elton Brand signed an extension. It was my understanding earlier in the week that after we had done the podcast, asking whether he was blindsided by this, it was my understanding that he was not. So I don't know how far back this Morey thing goes. My guess is it goes back a little ways, but I don't know how far. Maybe they said, I don't know if it was Woj or Shams said that they started talking shortly after he left the Rockets, and who knows, it may have even happened before that. So
Yeah.
So here we are, man.
What is your like feeling? I feel like the last pod was a little bit just sort of like gut reactionary. How now that you've had time to sit with it, how are you feeling?
So I was thinking about it. My wife and I went away for the weekend. We went to the Poconos. It was very nice to get away. We came back to a really cold house, but it was nice to get away. And I did spend some time just like trying to think about this, like trying to have a more a deeper thought than, oh my God, I can't believe they got Morey, which is really, a lot of the things that have happened over the last 7 years will look ridiculous in context. I can't believe that happened. But them ending up with Morey is truly an I can't believe that happened moment. I think what I came to was everyone sort of expects that he will, like Sixers Adam wrote a piece on rice-to-RickySanchez.com that, and to be honest, I told him, I said, hey, go line up a couple of Morey type deals and tell me what you think of them. And he did one for Chris Paul and one for Oladipo. And everyone sort of expects that this team is like right on the precipice of a championship, and that he will try to organize a way for them to become championship contenders this year. But what I sort of thought was, and this is less about him surveying the Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid thing, and more about the specific situation that they're in that will take some undoing to get out of, I think, and to put I think it is less likely that we will see a trade for Chris Paul. To me seems completely impossible. That they would lock themselves down even further with more money to another guy like that. My guess would be is that he spends a year trying to, I don't know, like reset everything and put a good team on the floor and see what they are. But that it is less likely to me that he goes all in to try to win a championship this year. That was my prevailing thought after thinking about it for a while. How about you?
I think a lot of things. As far as bigger picture, this feels to me, sitting with it, like the third act of the long view process. Mm-hmm. Like the first act was what we all understand the process to be, the Hinkie years. And then there was a long second act of confusion and sort of whittling away at all the goodwill and specifically players that they had and assets that they had accrued in that first act. And it all went to shit in so many different magnificent ways.
That we might not even get a third act.
Right. And but here we are.
Yeah.
And we bring in this guy and obviously they're not the same person, him and Sam. But it definitely feels like a return to that kind of thing. And so over the next 5 years with Daryl and Doc, we will be, seeing the will this Embiid and Simmons thing work. And I'm really invested in that. I think I was reading a Bodner article in The Athletic and just talking about the process will generally exist as long as Ben and more specifically Joel are here. And I really do want it to work with both of these guys. I think, I saw that picture of Doc and Daryl looking at just sitting together and being like, these are the guys now for us. And it feels a little bit, Daryl feels more like one of us because he's been on the podcast and he's talked about Sam and stuff. Doc feels like, wow, we have this guy who was, one of the premier coaches in the league, at least publicly in the last 15 years with Boston and the Clippers. And it feels a little fake still, a little fantasy football where you're not, they don't feel like us yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they just got here,
Right. And so it'll take time to do that. But I really do, as far as the Ship of Theseus goes, I really do, it'll feel so much better if it is Ben and Joel and the right pieces around them winning a championship here. And I know that is, nitpicky or maybe being precious about stuff. But I really as far as gratification goes for this long, trying, I was going to say a few years, but lifetime of Philadelphia.
Nearly a decade. For this alone.
For us, yes, nearly a decade. For me, being a public Sixers boy, over a decade now. I wanted to, the Sixers have been to the conference finals once in my life. One time. And it's been a lot of waiting for them to get good and real and stuff. And maybe the answer is like just be happy with whoever. It doesn't matter if you trade Embiid for like Bradley Beal and trade Simmons for like, I don't know, Rudy Gobert, whatever, not those guys specifically, but right. Fill in the jersey. As long as they're in a Sixers jersey, I'll be happy. But we've waited this long and put so much, heartbreak and aggravation and just time into them that I kind of wanted to work on my terms and under the terms that would make me feel the most satisfied and gratified and believing that it was worth the time and that I'm like a part of it is if it's with Ben and Joel. And so Daryl, I think, has that, feels like one of us quality. I'm sure Doc will in time as well. But that's kind of what I was thinking about over the last few days of being like, I said on the podcast last time that I don't think this offseason there's really much of a chance that either Ben or Joel gets traded. And I think that when we talk about the Sam interview, he made the point of like, think about how much it took to get them. Why would you just, don't rush to trade either of them just because, the last regime has clearly fucked up the pieces around them multiple times. As
if Sam has ever rushed to make any decision in his entire life.
True. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. I think that, and maybe that means I'm not like an unbiased arbiter of truth. I don't know anyone's ever called me that, but as far as the Sixers go, like I really wanted to work with Ben and Joel. That would make me feel the best is if that happened. So I'm asking Daryl to make it work with Ben and Joel.
Unbiased arbiter of truth sounds like the Black Friday T-shirt, honestly, because that's what everyone has referred to us as. Well, I agree in large part, but that was the same thing. Like it is what we have been dealing with this entire time over the last 3 or 4 years is as pieces go in and out, like for the sake of winning a championship, it has felt less and less a connection. Now, like I do think that Morey, even though he is not, I was going to bring up Ship of Theseus anyway, Morey is not part of the original ship, but he is a replacement part that really looks just like the original ship, right?
Yeah.
It's not a new piece on the ship. It is maybe a new piece that looks worn on purpose or something.
Yeah.
So it feels a little bit or a lot of bit like a return to that. But it is part of the thing that I wrestled with when they traded, Covington, Dario, when TJ left, or even the idea of LeBron coming here and winning a championship. And everyone was like, well, and I know you would have supported LeBron, and that's different than what you're talking about. But
my former coworker, LeBron.
Right. But there is a point at which it would be worth it more if you win it with the people who have been here. And it is sort of like almost running a marathon, and there are stories, there have been people that have cheated on marathon times by like taking a bus or something, going off the course and coming back, and you get this final marathon time, but if you didn't run it and you don't hurt and you don't feel it, did you actually win it? And I think there is something to be said for that. I would agree with you. I feel almost nothing with most of the players there. It is really only Embiid, and to a lesser extent, but also to Simmons, who are here. And I said on the last podcast that, Morey coming here may have saved the podcast for me. I don't mean that in a fake way. I was looking at this season coming up and having almost no desire to watch the 76ers, almost none, to watch them in December. But this has rejuvenated what I think the next 5 years can be, even if it doesn't have a championship. But yes, I would like them to try to do it with the players here. The question will be, with Ben and Joel, the question will be, have they cornered themselves into a place where that becomes impossible? I don't know. Yep. We'll see. They got the right guy to try to figure it out.
Yeah, there's been talk of along the same vein, there's been whispers of because it's Daryl and because Houston seems to be going through like a, Tillman Fertitta led, I don't know, cheapness or some level of like conserving money or whatever it is, not wanting to pay. They never really dipped into luxury tax or anything, but there's been talk of James Harden as like a natural sort of evolution of a trade piece. You're not a Harden guy, right?
I do like Harden actually a lot.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to give credit before we get into this. Lyle emailed us and said, let me get the actual email so I can give him credit. He said, I need both of you to say yes or no. No sitting on the fence. Would you trade Ben Simmons for James Harden?
I think the answer is absolutely.
You have to.
You have to. Yeah.
I
think Harden and Embiid would be just a ridiculous pairing.
And James Harden is one of the few best offensive players ever in the history of the sport.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting. I think there was a Kevin O'Connor piece a while ago about how Harden used to be in Oklahoma City. Like he used to fly around screens and used to use like off-ball cutting and stuff because he wasn't the guy. And now he just stands there, and he's still that good without standing there. And so like it's a weird. As far as like a pleasant watch, I would love to see a little bit more juice to his game if we were to have him. But like he's James Harden, man. He's so good. I'd be interested to see what him and Embiid would look like and other guys. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that Houston is dying to trade one of the best offensive players ever right now. But
no. My guess would be they're a little more eager to trade Russell Westbrook than they are James Harden.
Yeah, but Harden wants Westbrook there, and right. I also don't think like Harden is dying to go play for his GM again. Like that doesn't seem like a real relationship that anyone gives much of a shit about.
I can't wait to get to Philadelphia so I can see the GM once a week. Like, what is that even about? Right. Yeah. But I do think he would, depending on what they do in Houston, the desire for James Harden to stick around while they dismantle whatever chance they had also may be slim. So I don't know.
In a world where we talked about the Chris Paul trade, the Oladipo trade, I don't think a Chris Paul trade is impossible. We know that Daryl Morey loves Chris Paul, and I was thinking about a bigger picture. Oladipo is a different story, and we can get into that. But like, I was thinking about Daryl as the executive version of LeBron, and not in the way that he plays or anything, but in the way that like when LeBron comes to your team, you're gonna have a good chance of doing a bunch of special stuff, and by the time it's over, the cupboard is going to be empty. And I think that Daryl is a little bit the same way in that like he sees a window to win now. And he's trading draft picks. He's trading young guys, whatever it takes to get like the guys that he needs to maximize your chances at winning a championship, like in the window that it's possible. Which I would guess with Ben and Embiid is in like the next like 4 or 5 years.
Be careful what you say with now, though. He might not see the window to be winning in 2021.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I'm such a draft guy, and Daryl is, not a guy who makes picks. Like he's the guy who trades picks to get like the elite talent. Now I don't know because they already have the two type stars in place where they were still kind of like searching for that second one around Harden in Houston for a couple years. Maybe that's not the case here, but I'm not saying he's going to do the same exact thing, but I do wonder like, if there's a trade to be had and Daryl trades like all the young guys, a bunch of picks for the next like four every other year for the next like 5-6 years, it's gonna be weird for me because I'm such a big draft guy. But Daryl's done a good enough job of getting undrafted free agent talent over the years where he thinks the draft, judging by the moves, is a little bit overrated. I think we talked to him about it a little bit when he was on the podcast a few months ago. And so I wonder if that he would be more likely to use those types of sweeteners over and over again in a way that might, as a arbiter of truth, rock solid arbiter of truth, upset me a little bit. But he's a guy that I trust, and I will, I guess, trust him in that way.
We'll have to see. Another guy you should trust is Adam Kasabi, the official realtor of the process.
Let's
That's
go.
right. Come on. Did you see that right there? Before we get into the Hinkie interview and a couple of more things I wanted to get into, Adam Kasabi, Ksebe. Everyone wonders, how do you spell Kasabi? Ksebe. I spell it. Great realtor. That's how I spell it. That's not how you spell anything. ProcessRealtor.com. So Kasabi specializes in homes at the Delaware Beach. And I just mentioned that I spent a few days up in the Poconos. Let me tell you, spending some time away from the hustle and bustle of regular life is tremendous.
That's the dream.
It's great. It's absolutely great. So a house, one of the Delaware beaches, especially, a place like Lewis or Bethany that is away from a lot of hustle and bustle. And even in Rehoboth, there are plenty of areas there that are not, you don't have to be right by the boardwalk. Low property taxes, almost nothing. You're talking about like $1,000 a year. A great time to buy because interest rates are super low and you have the realtor to do it. That is Adam Kasabi. As well, he can't sell you a house in PA or New Jersey. He can't refinance your house, but he can be your window to those things. So if you're looking to buy a house in PA or New Jersey, you need to find the right realtor, the right places. If you need to refinance your home, like I needed to do, I went to Kasabi, pointed me to his refinance guy. Kasabi is a guy. ProcessRealtor.com. Several of our listeners have done both those things, have purchased homes in the Delaware beaches, but also have gone to him for those other things. Call or text him 302-864-8643, 302-864-8643, or adam@ProcessRealtor.com. So before we get to the Hinkie thing, I asked Mike O'Connor to go back through our interview with Daryl Morey in July, the end of July, and find some quotes that he could relate back to the current Sixers situation. So actually, there's one there. I just wanted to go through a couple of those. There's one there that relates right to what you were talking about. So he was talking about Hinkie and how a team operates differently when they're trying to contend. The whole reason you build up all the capital, and Sam did the best job I've ever seen, I think, building it up, is at the time you have a chance to win it, you go forward. And if there was a prominent player who could have been traded for even on a one-year rental a year ago, I could see Hinkie just piling all into that. You have to be on a success cycle, which is when you're down, you've got to build your store in the armory as much as possible. And then when you're up, you've got to use it all to eke small advantages to increase your chance to win. And you're going to go through these cycles, but that's fine. That's natural. The question will be where he sees them in the cycle right now, right? Whether it is to build the store back up or whether it is to use it all and eke out small advantages to increase their chance to win. I'd be curious to see where he thinks they are right this second.
Yeah, I mean, in the Hinkie thing, he kind of tempered that a little bit and said he doesn't think that they're right there. I don't think that they're straight up one move away in a very easy way to do. I think who would have thought that Miami was this close last year, or who would have thought that Denver was would have come as close as they did? I think there's a very conservative way to look at things prior to a season and being like, well, only the people that are there are the ones who are going to get there. And then the season happens and it's like, oh, I guess they're now this team. And Kawhi wasn't seen as that guy to do it until he did it. And so I do think that there's the tiers of teams that are capable of doing it right now are probably like Lakers, Clippers, Bucks. I guess you could say the Heat again, and maybe you'd say Brooklyn if you believe it. I think it'll probably take a little bit longer, but and then there's 8 teams that are in that mix of you say Denver, Boston, Toronto, whoever you believe in. But I think the Sixers are in that not first tier, not right there, but I think second tier of if things work out, they certainly have the talent to get there. I think they're a team that has won prior to this season. I don't know how it would have worked out, but basically about 50 plus wins for 3 seasons in a row. And so making that jump from 50 to 58 is hard.
Yeah.
But if they get there, if they make the right moves and Doc's the right guy to lead them there, then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, of course the Sixers are in the mix of like possibilities. I think there's a way to look at it. So I would say, you know, you look at the roster, you look at Tobias and his deal. Our boy Yaron Weitzman and our other boy Zach Lowe talked about it on Zach's podcast of like possible Horford and Tobias trades. And as far as like going all in, it's interesting about like, can you get value for it? You know, if you're going to trade either of them, are you going to get are you getting off of those contracts, or are you making your team better? And I think a lot of times you wouldn't be making the team better. You know what I mean?
Unless, to my original point, that he is like, the first thing we got to do is get off of these contracts so I have more room. I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It depends on how you look. It literally depends on how you look at 2021.
If you look at, so if Daryl comes in and says, this team's not good enough, straight up, we got to get off of this Tobias Harris contract. Would you trade Tobias Harris for like expiring Knicks deals like Julius Randle and Taj Gibson and whoever the fuck, and just sort of, you know, I don't want to say tank this season, but like that would give you probably a lesser chance of winning this season, and immediately get off on a slightly maybe bad foot with Ben and Joel, and maybe Doc. Although you got to think that he'd probably be a part of those conversations at least. They're sitting at the table together. I imagine those are conversations happening.
I hate to be in this place again, but I would do whatever he thinks is right. I mean, my personal thought is that I think Tobias Harris is a good player, but I do not think he is irreplaceable in any way. And I don't know how many wins it's costing you, and I certainly don't think it's costing you a championship. So, like, maybe it costs you 3 wins in a regular season, 2. I don't know what not having Tobias Harris costs you. So, if he really feels, and I've actually heard him say it before, what percentage chance he thought each Houston team had of winning the championship, you know, going into the playoffs. He has a percentage chance. What's the chance? And he had said that if the team has even 5% chance, you go all in. I'd be curious to think, because the odds, the DraftKings odds right now suggest that the Sixers do not have a 5% chance. They suggest that the Sixers have a 3% chance, which is less than 5, right? So I'd be curious as to what he thinks. But if he goes into it and is like, I'm looking at the landscape of the NBA, and I just don't think this is possible with this group. I need more flexibility, and we got to spend a year just seeing Ben and Joel play, and we got to get off of these deals, and I would be all for it.
I would say that you know, Ben and Joel have now suffered through a couple like clunky seasons, and Joel more than anybody else knows how. Maybe he doesn't want to think of it like this, but like, for lack of a better word, fragile this all is. It could fall apart fast. One injury, you know, the window closes, you know, bynum arthritis, whatever the fuck. I don't know that I would, maybe. I don't know that I would risk trading a like team leader in Tobias and a good player in Tobias for worse players that could potentially alienate your stars of being like, what are we doing here? What's going on? Who cares about the money? Whatever it is.
I agree with the notion, but I would say to you, in that respect, okay, team leader Tobias, great. Record or not, they failed fucking miserably this year, and nobody liked each other, and nobody was together, and like they just weren't. You can show me. I could see as many like pictures of them laughing at practice with a tweet that says, imagine not thinking these guys don't like each other. They were a disaster. You know, they were mentally and on the court a disaster. So Tobias is a good locker room guy and a good person and a good player and all of those things. But if he is the bond that is holding this, whatever the fuck last year was together, I'm not worried about it. I'm just not.
I hear you. And maybe I just think, I can't see as much as they do, like this many moves ahead to be like, okay, if we get out from under Tobias, these expiring contracts, whatever, still have a chance to be a 50-plus win team next year on the 82-game scale.
By the way, I think it would have to be Tobias and Horford, because if you don't, you're still at the cap with 3 guys. pretty much. I mean, you're even if you just get rid of Tobias, you're already over it. You're still over the cap the next year because of Embiid, Horford, and Simmons. So it would have to be both of them.
Yeah, I mean,
to create real flexibility, I think.
Anyway, it's not a. In my mind, this team has done the keep going, keep moving, trading, and it hasn't like. There's something to be said for having an element of consistency, and there was no consistency to the season last year. There was no pick and roll ball handler last year. By the way, a report. I just got a text from Sixers Adam. I'm looking. I was about to break it also. Let me finish. We can.
Okay. Right.
I think that it does not take sometimes shifting tectonic plates on a team for things to look way cleaner. And I know I've been pushing the trade Josh Richardson for a pick and roll ball handler for a long time and someone that can create a little bit. But I do think that like a couple moves on the fringes, a couple smart draft picks, improvement from the guys that need to be improved, like, not playing all of Ben Joel, Tobias, and Horford together for any length of time. I do think that opens things up and makes things cleaner and stuff. And I don't have any information about how Joel or Ben feels about that kind of thing, but I would just be reluctant to say like let's get worse next year because maybe we can get better players down the road, and especially if it's like worrying about the salary cap or paying the luxury tax. Like these guys are paying. They just gave more money to Elton Brand. They gave a ton of money to Daryl Morey. Like they're fine. Pay the luxury tax. Who gives a shit?
I know, but what I would say is just worse than what? Worse than you perceive them to be, or worse than they actually were, because they were on pace to win 49 games or something, and I think they could do that without Tobias Harris. And we can't on one hand say that Morey is good at finding these extra pieces to make everything go, and then say it will be impossible for him to do that if he trades Tobias Harris. Like I'm not campaigning for it. I don't think it would cost you as many wins or outlook on this season as you are saying.
Maybe. And there was a report that that the Mavs had interest in Tobias, which is interesting. I would certainly kick the tires on that. There's a bunch of guys on the Mavericks that I would like to have on the Sixers. Mm-hmm. In my mind, because of the shortened off season, because of the shortened season, because Embiid's health, especially in like an accelerated season, is he's going to miss games. I don't mind having Horford there to play, decently major minutes in those times. And then after next year, then all of a sudden his contract is much more palatable because it's expiring in a year, and you don't have to attach so much, Matisse or Shake or so many picks to get off from under him because it's like, oh, it's only 1 year, whatever. Whereas now it's still seen as like, that's a lot for that guy for 3 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of other factors at work with Horford. One of them is what he's like as a 16 to 18 minute a guy backup, just mentally, and also $30 million. And I do think that there is something to getting him out of here. And again, I'm maybe not. I don't think, but that's the vibe I've always gotten, is that they got to move on from Horford. Sure, it'd be great to have him as this backup that only plays a lot when Embiid isn't in there, but I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. All right, break the Sixers Adam news. He tweeted it. It's so weird to see a team source tells RTRS podcast and not be a joke.
Well, I got the text from Adam asking me, sort of like vetting our sources on this one. So, former Sixers executive vice president of basketball operations Alex Rucker is, quote, out, a team source tells RTRS podcast, as Daryl Morey enters one of the more pivotal front office names of the last few years' exits.
Such a normal guy tweet from Adam.
Yeah. Well, there he goes. Sixers Adam breaking the news that now, remember, Alex Rucker was with Brian Colangelo in Toronto. He hired Alex here. when Brian Colangelo was eliminated and Elton Brand was raised, Alex Rucker was also promoted. I forget what his title was. And it was pretty much seen as though he had as much personnel say as Elton had while they were here, in addition to the owners and things like that. So Alex Rucker gone. Ned Cohen, Keith Pompey reported, will stay, but I don't think Ned Cohen ever had anything to do with basketball operations anyway. So
Ned Cohen's been being tied to his chair for friggin' 3 years.
Poor Ned.
At the new practice facility, getting blamed for shit. Nobody knows what he does. Nobody knows what he looks like. His wife's profile is private. Like, give the guy a break, maybe. I don't know.
He hate listens to this podcast being like, I had no say. No say. No say. They don't collaborate with me. They say they're collaborating. They don't ask me.
He's actually the patch guy. Scott O'Neill's taking credit for his patch stitch.
All right. So we were given very slight advance warning on this, but Sam Hinkie appeared on the ESPN Daily podcast with one Pablo Torre, who, holds a lot of history in both Ricky and process lore. Of course, he wrote the article that quoted Tony Roten, which mentioned in Trusting the Process, which then, became this whole thing. Pablo Torre, of course, a friend of the pod, you would say, that married a couple at the lottery party a few years back.
Yeah, actually held the Trust the Process shirt up on Around the Horn.
Held the Trust the Process shirt up on Around the Horn.
That was then worn during the draft.
Right. So you would say that, Hinkie, and I'm of the mind, based on the conversation, that Hinkie and Pablo have had numerous conversations. Like they obviously talk quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Pablo with a very large platform, obviously, not surprising at all that Hinkie would go to Pablo to do his tell-all when Daryl Morey gets hired to be, which did seem like the impetus for this. Daryl Morey being hired as president of basketball operations for the Sixers made Hinkie go on Pablo Torre's podcast.
Yeah, he's gassing up his friend.
Yeah, and actually talking about everything. All of the things that, you would think you can't talk about, he certainly asked him. Pablo certainly asked him. I guess my question to you, Mike, is in 140 minutes of podcasting, or 100 minutes of podcasting, an hour, 40 minutes of podcasting, is it surprising to you that just to get it out of the way, to avoid a conversation like this, that neither Pablo nor Sam, with multiple opportunities, said the name of this podcast in that interview?
No.
It's not surprising to you at all?
No.
You're trying to act too cool for the room right now. It's not surprising to you?
No, it's not. I would have been surprised if they had said the name of this stupid podcast. Yeah.
Why?
Because it's not like Sam was the GM of the team. He wasn't the GM of the podcast.
Look, you can't talk to this guy for 100 minutes, and I don't care if anybody's mad at me for this. You can't talk to this guy for 100 minutes, talk about the reaction in town, the reaction from national media, the cult-like following that followed him, which we are responsible, at least in large part for. Not only responsible, but in large part responsible. And not Pablo, who has been, has dipped his water in banning before. Honestly, how do you not just say it at the very end? I'm very disappointed. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm disappointed. We'll talk about the interview.
That's very on brand for you. So I'm not surprised that I'm equally surprised that they didn't say it and that you're upset that they didn't say it. Those are the equal footing of lack of surprise. Although,
you were the one that wanted the giant say the name banner at, like, you wanted a 25-foot long say the name banner at the lottery party. You get mad at no name saying. You do. Don't act like you're better than me.
No, that's the thing. I get mad when they show clips of a lottery party and say Sixers fans gathered. I don't think that anytime anyone mentions the Sixers that they have to pay homage to us or anything.
Well,
although our boy Yaron Weitzman did say the name on Zach Lowe's podcast. So there you go.
And if the last question, and then we'll get into the actual interview. If Yaron had written that book and we had not been mentioned in that book, would we have even mentioned that book on a podcast?
Probably. Yeah. There's good stuff on there.
He did the right thing. We're part of the story. He should have asked him. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, if Pablo was doing a, hey, let's walk me through every step of it.
Right.
Then I think that, him at least getting his banner raised to the rafters would have been a question to ask.
Right.
But we know how Sam feels about it.
Well, maybe they cut some out.
Stupid.
Maybe Pablo's saving it.
Yeah, saving it. Saving it for your birthday.
All right. So it is amazing. And as Sam Hinkie is very good at doing, and he did, say that he was happy for Daryl, and Daryl will do a great job, and Daryl was the right guy, so on and so forth. Sam does do an excellent job of answering questions thoughtfully and not actually answering the question.
He always has.
Yes, he's expert at it. He's amazing at it. And he will put certain words in there that do sort of give him an out of the responsibility for the answer that you thought that he gave. Mm-hmm. Sort of like the one where he said, because Pablo asked about the idea of specifically trading Embiid. That's what he asked him. And then Hinkie goes something to the effect of, well, you should remember how hard it was to get any of them. He doesn't. He talks about all of the players. He doesn't even specifically answer the question about Embiid, and he doesn't even say yes or no, which I think is amazing. You better think real hard about that. Is all he says.
I think that's who he is. I think he is a absolutely singular weirdo. I love him. I think he's great. I would, if we were actually good friends, I would roast him constantly for his ridiculous brain working overtime on the dumbest shit. But I respect it. I think he's certainly a delightful listen. I thought Pablo did a great job of not holding him to account or anything, but really asking him some tough, made him answer some tough questions. I don't think that Sam does it. Brian Colangelo, I remember Brian was on Derek's podcast a while ago. I think this was paywall Godner era. And I think Derek asked 3 questions, and Brian just spent 20 minutes talking about really whatever the fuck he wanted.
Yeah, just like filibustering.
Sam doesn't, right, filibustering. Sam doesn't do that. Sam answers your question in a thoughtful way without really coming down on it, because I think that's just how his brain works. I think he just likes to think at every angle of the question, and he's not, he's already done the work of thinking about it, and him being like, were you surprised at this or that? He's like, no, I can see it. Like, I know, I get why they fired me. I understand it. Like, he's not going to get, I think he's done a good job of, maybe he's not this way in the moment, but when he comes back and thinks about things, I think he does think about things from so many different angles that he takes the emotion out of it, at least on his end, and can see where people are coming from. Yeah.
And by the way, like I've said before that I don't think he is angry at Josh Harris or David Blitzer or any of those things, but it is hard to talk about the emotion. His farewell letter is both very good and very well written and so pissy at the same time. Even if he would never admit it, it was pissy.
I would just ask him, so how much pissiness did you put into the line, Scott O'Neill can ably separate the people of Delaware Valley from their wallets on your behalf? Like, how much did you, when you did that, was like some pee leaking out of your, just a little bit because you just like had to put it in there? Or did you kind of like do a little shimmy as you wrote that? Because I would have.
So here are the things, and you alluded to this earlier, here are the things that I felt like he did actually answer. One of them was he actually gave the true answer, but the other ones were sort of, you had to be listening for it a little bit. You mentioned earlier how close the Sixers we talked about it extensively, how close the Sixers may or may not be. Hinkie said, I think at 3 different moments, that if Morey is given enough time to yada, 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 or if he is, it did not seem like, given his answers, that he thought this particular Sixers team was that close to a championship, that there was a lot of work to do. Not that it was impossible, but that it would take time for Morey to do it. Did you get that same sense?
Yeah, I think he said it almost word for word. It's like, I don't think this is a team that's going to win a championship next year, or like on the cusp, or it's an easy, like right knocking, whatever. And I think that, like I said before, I think that it is a couple. There's ways to put yourself in that situation so that you're like, the way Sam thinks about it. Are they a 3% chance right now? Maybe could you get them to 8%, like with more ball handlers and buy-in from these guys and willingness of Ben to shoot, whatever, like any number of things. Could that like inch yourself up and then all of a sudden like things look good and whatever? I think so, but I think Sam looks at things from a very clinical way, and odds are they're not going to win a championship next year. I think you wouldn't lose much money by betting that. But I do think that there's a chance that they can get there in such a weird season.
Another thing, he asked him specifically about Simmons and the fit of the two, and then asked about Ben Simmons. He sort of gave innocuous answers about the fit of the two, but when
he said he doesn't really, he's like, look, I'm not paid to watch them. Like I watch some, I don't watch all. I'll watch fourth quarters and all that stuff. And this has always been the case. Like I've been saying for years, don't watch all the games.
Yes.
Or only watch the wins.
And look at how successful Sam Hinkie is not watching all the games.
Oh, so good at it.
So great. Seems so happy. By the way, the one thing, I don't share very many things at all, I would say, in life with Sam Hinkie. But at the end, he mentioned that he will not tell his wife what he is ordering at a restaurant because he doesn't want her decision based on his. So and good. I 100% agree. It infuriates my wife every time, but I will not tell her.
That's insane. You guys are both out of your minds. Really, just like I would absolutely just listen to a podcast of Sam Hinkie's wife being like, this fucking guy, he makes it so hard for me to just like being around him. Like I
just want to know what he's getting. I
don't mind a hedge. Yeah. I like a hedge. Give me more options to eat. It widens your chance of having good bites of things.
He did ask him about, so he talked about Ben Simmons shooting threes, and Hinkie responded basically saying he needs to get to the line more. He needs to basically throw himself at defenders. He brought up Jimmy Butler to get at the line more. He needs to finish with both hands.
Absolutely.
He needs to athletically finish over defenders with both hands. It sounded like it was one of the answers he had sounded like he has already thought about. Mm-hmm. And we've mentioned it a million times. It always comes in concert with the shooting thing, is the getting to the line thing, which is for sure. And I think we talked about it on the last podcast. That's what LeBron did. LeBron was so big and strong and fast and could dribble that in the early part of his career, he did that constantly. And it's something that Ben needs to do, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tobias obviously less athletic, but I think about the same stuff with him. Like, you need to be able to get to the line regularly and get easy looks at it. And Sam told a story about like Chuck Hayes, about how he's shooting like 50% from the line, and that's not great, but that's still like 1 point per possession. Like, for the most part, you take that.
Well, and it gets a foul on the other team.
Yeah.
Which puts you in a more advantageous position in terms of the quarter, getting to the line and fouling that person out. And I think the other thing, he talks to Embiid regularly, which didn't surprise any of us.
So sweet.
Yes. The other thing that he said, him coming back to the Sixers was always fan fiction. That was never going to happen.
Yeah.
He did, and he said 0% chance, which I totally unsurprising. Him coming back to the NBA, he said 0% chance.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising to me that he wouldn't ever come back. Was surprising to me that he said he would never come back.
Yeah.
As somebody who only deals in likelihoods and percentages and understands what 0% means.
Yes, I agree. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
I think he's gotten this status of, lionized by so many people, and this sort of mysterious, Pablo called him like J.D. Salinger type. I think that like the expectations of what he would have if he came back and just like was the, if he was like, hey, I'm now the GM of the Magic and we're finishing like 42-40. Like, what a sad story that would be. And so I think like the expectations of what would be expected, plus the like genuine lot of work and commitment that would have to be put in. I think he's like, look, I'm kind of, and he wouldn't say this, but like, look, I'm kind of famous now. I'm famous in like a bunch of areas. I can kind of do whatever I want.
Right.
I can get excited about young people. I can like, I can consult with the Denver Broncos or whatever. I can kind of dabble and stuff and just make money as this,
well, he's a venture capitalist now, which is something that you're into.
I'm so into it. I'm surprised that Pablo didn't ask him about fixing email. I thought that would have been pretty high on my list of questions. And it's like, how are you going to fix email? I wonder, like, any bugs or anything that you're going to, dabble in. But no, I think that I'm surprised that it was 0 also. But I think in his mind, the risk reward and plus he kind of gets to do whatever he wants right now is worthy enough. And he felt. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't give like a 1%, like a little out for himself.
The Michael Jordan 99.9% retiring thing. But then, of course, here's the other thing I would say. If you're looking at it from his perspective, if he says, I'm happy now, I'm 99% sure I would never come back, the headline becomes Sam Hinkie leaves open possibility of return to NBA. If he says this and he decides to come back one day, nobody's like penalizing him for saying
I will
Pablo
penalize
Torre.
him. Me and you have to hold him to account as arbiters of truth that we will penalize him for coming back and if he runs the Hornets or something.
We'll ban him then.
Can't do it. You said no. You said 0.
I heard it. I heard you say 0.
Yeah.
Before we get to relationship advice, it will go back to an email we got in April, believe it or not. It is a follow-up to relationship advice. The person I always go to for relationship advice is LL Pavorsky of LL Pavorsky Jewelers. Mike, did you know that we're at 202 engagement rings sold to Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners by LL Pavorsky?
It's quite a lot of people.
Yes, it's a huge number of people.
And theoretically, it's 202, but it's really 404 because you're getting engaged to someone. So you're buying it for 2 people, which I think we should factor in.
Yeah, so it's 404 people affected by engagement rings purchased from LL Pavorsky. He's the original sponsor of the pod. He's been there since the beginning. He's as happy about Morey as you or I are. Look, he's always hitting me up for Ricky stuff so he can give listeners who buy engagement rings a little Ricky prize. I gave him a few of the Rockets podcast T-shirts. Gave him a couple of Mike Scott posters. He's just like, he's a good dude. He's in this crazy world, right? This crazy world that we're in now. You might not feel comfortable going to see Lee in his store. You might want to do it all online. LL will do it that way. He'll FaceTime you. He'll Zoom you, whatever you want. In the store, it's appointment only because he wants to keep everything safe, wants to clean in between people, allow for enough distance. It's just LL in the store, maybe Jeff, his security guard. That's about it. Plenty of space for you to be. 215-627-2252. Lee at llpavorsky.com. The store's at 707 Walnut. It's been there for 32 years. He's the fucking man. LL Pavorsky supports our charities, quoted by kids, Providence Animal Center, and really anything that we do. LL Pavorsky Jewelers.
Introducing the new finger condom engagement ring.
Just a one, sort of like the short sleeve T-shirt with the sleeves attached to it. Is it going to be the ring with the finger condom on it?
That's right.
That'd be great. Do you have any other Sam thoughts before we get to relationship advice?
I had a couple things. I did want to point out because I read the Michael Connor re-listen column as well, and I thought that the question that you asked about whether Daryl would rather have a player's coach or a big strategic coach, which is essentially the Mike D'Antoni versus Doc Rivers.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like D'Antoni wasn't a player's coach. He is actually not he's seen as a pretty easy guy. But basically what I asked him was, I said, would you rather have a 10 relationship guy and 5 strategy guy, or a 10 strategy guy and 5 relationship guy? And yes, it is very much Doc Rivers versus MDA.
Yeah,
sure.
And so Daryl picking that is interesting, and that's why it does seem a little bit more like the Sixers saw that this was maybe a little bit, maybe they were reading the tea leaves that Daryl was going to leave, and so they started like assembling an offseason essentially that he would entice Daryl to come. And so,
and remember, Doc Rivers was a like interviewed with Houston and immediately pivoted to the Sixers.
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
so I thought that was interesting. It's important. He said it's important to get the top player. More important to get the top player than to have him be in the exact perfect system. And so if you expand that out to Ben and Joel, it's more important to get the two top players than to have them be in the exact perfect system. And so hopefully the combination of them plus Doc buying in, and then some adjusting on the margins, someone who can dribble, ideally, would be interesting. And so yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought the Hinkie interview was really good. It's just cool to hear him talk and think about stuff the way he does. Like, he's such a fun. I would just make fun of him constantly if we were friends. But I love the guy. I really feel like I know him, and that's obviously not true. I've had lunch with him a couple times, but like, I really feel like I just deeply know that guy, and weirdly, he's been a big part of our lives. Like, whatever it is in this fucked up podcast process situation, who knows what we're talking about ever, but I appreciate him, and it's good to hear that he's doing well, and that him and Joel still talk makes me happy.
Yeah, all this happened because of him. Like this whole thing, this whole, he made sports more interesting. He made being a Sixers fan more interesting. All of this stuff is more interesting because of him, and it may not. I find incredible value in things being more interesting and rethinking the way that I think about things. And I think if you just go through sports thinking that the only way you're ever going to be happy is if your team wins a championship, most years you're going to be fucking annoyed. It's going to feel like a big waste.
And I am. I think, to me, it's like, I think there's a lot of people that, a lot of people in the NBA and other sports that have innovated, right? And that have taken things to their logical conclusion and pushed the limits and all that stuff. To me, it wasn't like when they got Hinkie, it was like, finally, the only guy who believes in analytics and information. It was more like, for so long, and like I said earlier, they've been to the conference finals once in my life. Even Iverson, who is beloved and a generational player and one of the most unique players of all time, and absolutely changed the culture in a bunch of ways, he went to one conference finals. And so the Sixers for so long just had like no plan whatsoever. Since they traded Barkley, just like nothing, just like totally blindfold, just pissing into the wind was all of their organizational ethos. And finally they brought a guy in who had, hey, we will do whatever it takes to get a superstar to try to win championships with. And obviously it went wrong, but hopefully we're back to that. And it's just the idea of like, look, they're not going to win a championship every year. Most teams won't win a championship ever. But in my mind, from as long as I've been talking about the Sixers publicly, you have to try. That like has to be the goal. And it can't be just like, well, maybe Evan Turner will, you never know how good he's going to get. He could hit baseline jumpers for the rest of his career. Like, it was, everyone's deludes themselves into thinking that like maybe, but like to actually put the work into with the real goal of a championship, to me, was what made me believe in this shit. And obviously we're not there yet. Obviously it took a ton of different paths in wrong directions a bunch of times, but like a plan in place was always what appealed to me the most, and what I'll be grateful for, that like the Sixers and even our dumb fuck owners like seem to give a shit about. And that's
Can I say
what
this
I'm holding
too?
on to.
Email is fucked up, and he doesn't mean. Look, I've not talked to him about this. He doesn't mean how email works or doesn't work.
Okay.
The problem with email, and I know you are not like an office guy kind of job. That's not really how your life operates. I am, and I'm a manager. And the problem with emails is that all email does is beget more email. So what people think is, if they get an email and they need to solve a problem and they forward it to somebody else, they think their job is done. Now you solve the problem. And the issue becomes, it is an endless chain of emails. You answer an email. Why are people sending emails at 8 o'clock at night? Who's going to fix anything at 8 o'clock at night with work emails? You're just going to have to talk the next morning anyway. people use email. This is just a personal thing. Use email to not do things, I think. They procrastinate. And there is an article. It actually pissed me off. And I don't think we're going to have time to talk about it in this pod, nor do you want to. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal, thanks to Ricky listener Steve, who pointed this out to me. Subject line: a $433 billion Wall Street giant has a reputation problem. It's Josh Harris's job to fix it.
I got that from Weber. Weber sent me that.
Okay.
And it was like, this PR campaign to rehab Josh's image is really very fun.
Well, I read it. It doesn't totally paint him in a great light. But one of the things that it talks about is people in his company, especially lower level people, would say something to the effect of, if Josh Harris emails you at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night and you don't respond within 10 minutes, he will email you back with a question mark. Fuck that. That is not what email is for, bro. We can't just spend our whole lives looking at fucking email. It's not.
That's just a shitty boss. I don't think that's email. I think
I'm
email
telling you,
is a medium.
email, if he had to call you,
if he called you and left another message saying like "what the fuck," or if he texted you and said the same question mark, it's the same thing. I think.
But people don't call. They use email as a way to be passive aggressive in that way.
Sure.
That's all. That's all I'm saying. Is I'm with Sam on the honestly.
So you
it's
think
a bigger
so? You're
problem
reading
for me
into
than
Sam's
this.
email question and wanting to fix email is wanting to fix passive aggressive nature.
There's a lot in there.
I think email is perfect. I wouldn't touch it.
Email is not perfect.
Perfect.
I
No
could do a
issues.
whole thing.
People
on
are
this.
wrong. Email is immaculate. The BCC. You can put emojis in there.
You can put emojis in anything.
See?
No. Time for relationship advice.
I keep my heart under my pillow with my teeth and other lies. I've been waiting on your halo just to shine the light.
Thanks to Eliza Hardy-Jones, who gives us the music for relationship advice from her album Because Become. Now, Mike, you may remember we received an email from an Australian listener in April. You probably don't remember. But basically what he was saying was his best friend came out about 4 or 5 years ago as gay. Before he had come out, he had a girlfriend, but obviously did not keep that relationship afterwards. And this guy who emailed us had started to develop a friendship with this girl and wanted to know if it was okay to date her because he thought his friend, even though gay now, may be sensitive to it. So we gave our advice, and he comes back with another email, also from Australia. I'm back, and I'm in need of additional advice. This is a follow-up to relationship advice about my gay best friend's ex-girlfriend. I ended up confessing my feelings for her. She said she wasn't ready to date, however, that I shouldn't take that as a flat-out no. Oh my God, that's such an annoying answer. Anyway, I obviously respect her response and continued to be friends with her. I felt surprisingly good after she told me. I guess it was a bit of closure. Fast forward a couple months till now. My feelings have intensified and it's becoming a major distraction in my day-to-day life, leading to a pretty extreme mood swings and anxiety. I've come to a point where I'm finding it pretty unlikely we'll ever date. I feel like the only option to relieve any anxiety is to tell her that it's hard for me to be around her, and although it's selfish for me to throw away this friendship, I feel like it's best for me to stop talking to her. Doing this would ruin a great friendship for all three of us, me, my crush, and my best friend. My best friend is also struggling mentally at the moment. This won't help him at all. I guess my question is, what should I do? Meeting new people is hard for me, and I'm not sure I'll find someone like her anytime soon. I appreciate you guys a lot. I know you like to say busy Spike, but you guys deserve a break, especially Mike. Dude looks tired. You need a dog or a relaxing holiday at the Delaware beaches.
Yeah. I mean, imagine during a pandemic, someone having mood swings or anxiety.
I know, hard to believe.
He must be the only one.
So how do you, I have my thought on how this gentleman should handle this, but I don't know what you think.
I think she wasn't ready to date, in my mind means she's trying to let you down easy.
Yeah.
But I think I don't think it needs to be a full conversation. It could be a gradual, sort of like,
just distance yourself a little bit.
Yeah, a little distance. Maybe talk to your friend about it if you want to. everybody's anxious. We're living in a crazy time with email, etc.
Email doesn't help. I have a lot of anxiety related to email. I agree with you. Look, I wish everyone in the world could be super straight when you're like, I want to date, and I wish she would say, I'm just not interested in dating you, but that also would have hurt your feelings, and nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings. I do think it's a human thing to do what she did in saying, hey, don't ever give up, because then that keeps you, I don't think she's being malicious in this, but it keeps you engaged and around, and it also keeps the relationship, the friendship sort of uneven, which kind of sucks. I agree with you entirely. I don't think you need to give her I think we need to talk less. I think you need to start distancing yourself a little bit for your own mental health, and everyone will figure it out. Don't be some sort of martyr and say that you need to keep your friend happy and her happy by doing something that makes you unhappy, unless that's going to a restaurant once in a while that you don't like that much, or watching a movie that you're not that into. Those are fine things to do, but keeping yourself depressed and anxious for the sake of their happiness, which, by the way, it probably, they're going to be fine if you're not super friendly with her. If you have, so I think the space thing is a good idea.
There you go. Can I tell one quick story? Me and Melissa have been phone banking for various places, and sometimes we've been phone banking for candidates in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And we did it yesterday, and Alyssa talked to a Ricky listener.
Oh, really? How did that come up?
So they were talking about the election, and he said something like, I wasn't on the call, but he said something like, will the commercials stop after the election's over? And she's like, I would guess, but I'm not in Pennsylvania. And he was like, then why are you calling people? It's like, oh, my boyfriend's from there. And then something like, somebody said something about the Sixers, trust the process or whatever. And Alyssa was like, well, do you listen to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez? And this guy, whose name is, I believe his name is Antimo. So shout out Antimo. Whose fiance, I believe, is in Tanking to the Top, is the woman holding the In Hinkie We Trust sign in the book. And apparently it was just like, oh, the Ricky, which one? Which guy? And it was me, and he said that he loves me and he loves Derek. And so I don't know where you fit into this guy's worldview, but he listens to the podcast and he really likes Derek.
Well, then he's paying my fucking bills. That's honestly.
But it was cool. He was nice. He was cool.
Yeah, that is very nice.
So
by the way,
if you get a call from someone, it might be me and Alyssa reminding you to vote early and in person.
Yeah, you never know. You never know who it could be. You're getting that call that looks like a potential, political call. You might want to pick it up. You never know who it could be.
Yeah. And he was like, what does Mike think about where Horford's going to go? And she's like, I'm not sure. But put that vote in. And
all right, vote for Jen O'Mara. I'm out. See you later. All right. A couple of mailbag questions before we get out of here. Mailbag brought to you by Kinetic Skateboarding. Big news. Ben from Kinetic was so disheartened by my criticism of his doing sales at midnight that there's going to be a very special sale coming up that's going to happen at 7 a.m. for Kinetic Skateboarding.
For the olds.
For the people who work. What are we talking about?
For all the olds. Everybody, get out your walkers and shuffle to your desktop computer at 7 a.m.
Fuck off. Tons of great stuff at Kinetic. Hey, look, snowboarding is a socially distant activity. Kinetic is your spot for snowboard stuff. Also, if you just want, now that it's cool outside, if you just want some, pants and hoodies and new sneakers, Kinetic is your spot too. Kinetic Skateboarding, use promo code Dave Silver for 9.1% off your first order. So this is from Garrett, and Garrett is a very conscientious emailer, has emailed me several times about my food choices before in a positive way, and heard us discussing single-use paper towels over reusing washable paper towels. And he said, you were wondering about the environmental impact of single-use napkins or paper towels versus reusable cloth napkins. So he tracked down a study from 2011 that determine the life cycle assessment of both. Here is the conclusion. The results of the study cannot be used to support general statements regarding the environmental superiority of either the product group single-use napkins or the product group reusable napkins. The results in the sensitivity analyses have shown that the results of comparison depends on the type of napkin product, the size of the napkin, the type of textile used in reusable napkins, and what environmental impact category is considered most important by the reader.
That is ambiguous.
What's that?
That is ambiguous.
It's pretty ambiguous because it does bring up, as I mentioned before, if you're using reusable things, you have to use the water to clean it and the energy to power the washer and the dryer, who knows. So we cannot support, if you want to use reusable napkins, it's fine, but we cannot support that it's necessarily better for the environment. This comes from Nate. Basketball question. I like this one for you, Mike. Imagine the only people running for president were Brian Colangelo and Scott O'Neill. Neither of them is attached to a political party, and neither has endorsed any policies you agree or disagree with. They are running simply on the basis of their professional track record only. You have to vote for one of them. Which one do you choose?
If neither of them had any policies, then it stands to reason that they wouldn't do anything. So I wouldn't vote. And under those circumstances, I would not vote.
You wouldn't vote at all?
If I had to vote, gun to my head, I would vote for Brian because I believe Brian is capable of being coerced
Sensitive.
based on public opinion and would respond to the needs of people if they're clamoring enough. Whereas Scott, I think, would only be out for himself. Although, now I love Scott and am Mormon.
All right. I would also, for the same reasoning, I would pick Brian Colangelo.
President Brian. President Collars.
Yep. Non-basket, and it would be so easy to get under his skin. It would be very difficult to get under Scott O'Neill's skin publicly, but seeing the Brian Colangelo interviews would be entertaining. Non-basketball question. I'm curious about the process behind which RTRS sponsors get to go in which episodes. Is there a
thrilling question.
Is there a simple rotation, or are there deeper issues at play? Do any sponsors want to be in the same episodes, or by contrast, are there any sponsors that can't be in the same episodes?
Wow.
Does LL get certain preferential treatment? Any Mad Men style inside baseball you're willing to share? I gotta tell you,
I intentionally do worse on Cornblow episodes because it's a grudge that I've been holding for a long time, and so I make it a worse episode.
I got to tell you, I'm sorry, Nate. It's really just sort of we have a deal with so many commercials per month with each of them, and I sort of rotate them, keep them even. That's about it. Occasionally, Big Barker and By Nature will be in the same podcast, which seems funny to me. But the last part of information, all of our categories are exclusive. So we're not going to have another realtor on the podcast, so we don't have to worry about having two.
We will have another realtor on the podcast if they duel with Kasabi.
And finally, an email from Mike and then a question from Nick. Email from Mike. We got 2 Scott O'Neill stories in the email. This one felt funny and also harmless. After hearing so much about Scott O'Neill in the past few pods, I decided I'll share my experience with the beloved CEO. I won a radio contest a few years ago for 2 tickets to a game and the opportunity to play in a knockout. You're going to love this so much. Please don't read ahead. I won a radio contest a few years ago for 2 tickets to a game and the opportunity to play in a knockout tournament on the Sixers court afterwards. Mm-hmm. This was in the deep depths of the process, and Nerlens Noel was the best player on the team at the time. The winner received a jersey and a chance to meet Nerlens. There were about 75 contestants lined up on the court after the Blazers' 30-point drubbing of the Sixers. After 2 rounds, Scott O'Neill, wearing a 3-piece suit, asked to cut in front of me in line. I naturally said yes, not realizing who he was. The line was moving slowly, as most of the 75 contestants could barely shoot an NBA 3. Scott introduced himself and told me his relation to the team. After a few more minutes, there were about 15 of us left. This is when he said to me, quote, "Wouldn't you hate to lose to a guy in a suit?" I promptly knocked him out on the next go-around. I came in 3rd place, but knocking out Scotty was worth a lot more than a picture with Nerlens Noel. Love the pod, trust the process.
Wow, so Scott definitely saw this guy and was like, no way, this guy's going to fucking knock me out. went in front of him and then lost. It's such a treat. What a treat
Another
that is.
T-shirt idea, by the way. Wait, what's the quote? Wouldn't you hate to lose to a guy in a suit?
I'm just surprised that he didn't say like a $3,500 suit or something. I'm surprised
Yes.
he didn't put like a Job-esque price.
This
to it.
comes from Nick. Basketball question, non-basketball question. Basketball question. With the rumors circling about Oladipo potentially being on the block, would you guys want to pursue him? Seems like the kind of deal Morey might covet. Roll the dice on a buy low former star who could return to form. I imagine the trade would be Josh, Mike, 21, plus some combo of other stuff. Josh seems exactly like the kind of player Indiana would like to respectfully overpay to slightly perform in a Pacers uniform. I would do that trade for Oladipo.
Yeah, Josh has a contract for this year, and then I believe a player option for next year, the following year for like $11 million or something. It's interesting. The Oladipo market, I'm intrigued by.
Because it's lower than I thought you would think it would be.
Well, because
I
he
think.
wasn't. So he had that one really, really good year when he got to Indiana, and then the following season, he was pretty mediocre and then got hurt. And then when he came back this season, pretty naturally, he didn't look like he had as much juice to him. And so he is now, how old is he? Like 28? He came out in 2013,
something
the year
like
before
that.
Joel. He was 28, yeah. He's good. Like, he's got bounce to him when he's all healed up from the injury. I think he would fit in nicely. He seems like a good guy that wants to win and play in a bigger market.
Plays hard, all that
He's
kind of
looking
shit.
like Miami was looking at him, and they were looking at each other for a while. But now it seems like they wouldn't want to trade like Tyler Hero for a guy that's older and potentially not going to get back to the heights that he hit before. I'm intrigued by it. I think that I agree that it is a kind of undervalued potential. As far as you were talking about last time, like you're going to need another top 25 type player to put with Ben and Joel, and Oladipo could kind of sneakily become that again because he was a couple years ago and hasn't been. So I'd be interested in it. It could also work out really poorly and he could just look like a combo guard version of Tobias Harris.
Yeah, I mean the question is how much you give up, and if it goes poorly, is it like, okay, that went poorly, or is it, oh my God, look at what we gave up?
Yeah, I would guess that it's Josh, Mike Scott, Matisse, and 21 would be my guess of what it would take.
I would do that.
I might. It wouldn't
It's
be
worth the
It
shot.
wouldn't be the first thing that I do. It wouldn't be the first thing that I look to do. But I wouldn't say dismiss it out of hand. You know what I mean?
And then his non-basketball question from Nick. Maybe this won't be a debate at all, but I'm curious. Growing up, my mom always taught my brothers and me not to wear gray with khakis. No gray sweater, t-shirt, blazer, etc. My sister-in-law is befuddled by this and has told my brother it's ridiculous. Gray and khaki, he means khaki color, are both neutral and go fine together, she says. Do any of you have an opinion about gray on khaki?
I've worn gray with khaki. I think it can look good. I think it can look weirdly clashing, depending on the tones and the patterns. But I think it can look sort of like sneakily elegant also.
Yeah, I would add, like I'm imagining khaki pants, a very light in heaviness gray sweater with a white t-shirt underneath, maybe a V-neck gray sweater with a white t-shirt underneath. I would want to add some sort of color somewhere so you don't look like a ad for fall Old Navy clothes or something. But I think it's fine. It doesn't seem like a rule that you should never do.
Yeah.
And there are very few rules you should never do. Like one of them used to be, what's the shoes rule?
Never send an email.
What's that? All right. All right. Well, that's it. Daryl Morey is the president of basketball operations for the Sixers. Will
Still.
be announced tomorrow. Elton Brand's still here, so that's cool.
Wild.
We love Elton. And it seems like according to Sixers Adam, Alex Rucker is gone and Ned Cohen is staying. So I mean, we wanted an overhaul. This is a fucking overhaul.
Report on the chefs, Adam.
Yeah. What's happening with the chefs? Are you down with TTP?
Yeah, you know Lickface.
If you don't fuck with me,
Then I won't fuck with you. If you don't fuck with me,
then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you.
if you don't fuck with me,
Then I won't fuck with you.
But if you fuck with me,
That's a friend.